for joining us.
Hi.
How are you?
Good. Having me.
All right, so before we begin with our talk show and discussion, but by the way, thank you so much for joining us right here. It is a true honor to have you within us today. I mean, me and Kai, we're not Gadis anymore, but we've been Gadis before. So before that, Kai, shall we remove our mask?
Yes.
Yes, because we are easing our restriction, and I think it is better for us to conduct this talk show. Please remind me, I'm a hijabi, so it's kind of a bit tricky here and there. But Kai, maybe you can proceed with the the discussion with Adelle.
Yes. So Adelle, it is so great to have you here. And we were just talking about girls and insecurity in that survey that was conducted by Watson. So it's very, very interesting. So what is your opinion about that particular survey that showed that women in Asia in particular are still very, very prone to have lower self-esteem than other countries?
Yes, thank you for having me.
Thank you for being here.
And I think that, unfortunately, that survey wasn't a surprise to me because in the community of Rahasia Gadis, we've collected 40,000 stories of young girls across Indonesia. And for sure, one of their biggest challenges is their self-esteem and their confidence. And so I think that issue of confidence, how do we help girls to believe in themselves more, is something that we have to pay attention to in Indonesia, but of course in this region as well.
Oh, it's very interesting. Just out of curiosity, according to you though, does confidence come from the outside influence or from the inside influence? I've always wanted to ask that to somebody.
For sure. So me personally, I've struggled a lot with confidence. I think a lot of young girls do.
Yes.
And I think a big part of why I think we lost that sense of confidence is actually due to outside factors, outside expectations, negativity that impacts our internal, what we think about ourselves. Because there is actually a study that shows that girls actually lose their confidence during puberty. So they were very, very confident leading up to when they're 12 and 13, and then something changes. And so that's the sad phenomena.
Yeah, I think, and then of course, Adele, I think we've been in that part also, in that kind of stage, right? Because when before we hit our puberty, it seems that men or boys and girls were also we're always the same.
Yes.
We can do anything, any sports together and whatnot. But when we hit puberty, we see the changes in our body.
Yes.
Why am I changing? Why my friends are not changing it? And because of that, and I think that started where people kind of, that's where we start to kind of adapt the culture. I look better than you.
Yes.
Right? It started from that young age, and especially now social media plays a big part of it.
Huge role.
Where children or kids, basically girls, can see, there's this, this phenomenon where girls typically look like that is so much cooler, so much beautiful than me. Now let's talk about, back in Indonesia. What do you think is the challenges, especially, for the girls right here in Indonesia, seeing now social media plays a big part in their lives?
Yes. The challenge is confidence, is it? A lot. So for sure, number one is social media, and it's interesting because my whole community is based on social media. So I think social media is kind of neutral, but it can play a factor, especially when you're constantly comparing yourself. I think comparison is one of the biggest issues because you're constantly looking at your entirety of your life and you're comparing to someone's highlights, right? And most of the pictures online and the videos are online are edited, but we don't know that. So it sets a huge beauty standard. But aside from our internal comparison, I think there are also a lot of bullying that takes place, right? So it's maybe not our own self-doubt, but someone else's action towards us that really affects how we look ourselves. And also thirdly, it's relationships. I think growing up, everything seems so peaceful. You just have your parents, but then you become a person, you interact with one another, and you realize that relationships do affect a lot of self-esteem. In Rahasia Gadis, the community that I lead, a big part of the reason why girls have a deterioration of how they perceive themselves is because of bad relationships, toxic relationships. And so here in Indonesia, how do we help girls who we want them to be in society, to be in relationship with another, but how do we maintain their sense of worth, right? Going through this life, because I think that's one of the most important factors.
Worth and growth. And you know what? I just seen your Instagram, my Rahasia Gadis Instagram. It seems that Rahasia Gadis become a friend that you need in life. That's what I felt. Like, the topics that you talk about and whatnot. Me, I don't know, but like me and Kai, maybe in our time at that time. We don't have that, you know.
Yeah.
We don't have
we have to go through the hard stuff on our own.
Exactly.
That's the thing.
Yeah.
That's the thing. That's the reason why we like first started it. Because I felt like when I was in high school, I just felt like sharing your emotions or sharing your stories is a weakness. You don't want to, so you end up like just dealing with everything alone. Even though I had friends, but they didn't really understand what was going on and the insecurities that you have. And what I realized was throughout university, the one thing that helped me out of like a really dark season of my life where I just was doubting everything was a support system. And so going back to Indonesia, I was thinking, how can we replicate the support system that can actually save lives? Because the power of Rahasia Gadis, it isn't that we're only a community that we create content, but we have a platform called Confession Room where every single day, hundreds of girls from across Indonesia come to us, tell their stories, and we respond to every one of them. And the stories range from like, I'm insecure about my body and I just broke up to my boyfriend, but even to really dark things like I was just sexually assaulted, I have suicidal thoughts, I'm depressive. And so just talking to them, being there for them, encouraging them can actually save their life and their sense of self-worth. So that's why I'm very passionate about this.
Of course, because I think it's such a powerful thing, and for social media to be able to be used for something like that as well, because we know if there is, if there is this kind of support system that can be replicated. But my curiosity, because you mentioned before, how do we replicate, or how do we show these girls and help them maintain their self-worth throughout growing up, right? When you do the talks or like, outreaches to the girls, what is your take on how to create these filters that would help them, stop comparing themselves to other people or other social media accounts? Influencers accounts are also very, okay, they're great, but there can be really, they can backlash and can also be very sensitive to, very young and gullible girls that are just experiencing the whole world in a different eye.
Yes.
So is there any approach that you do to help the girls specifically, maintain their filters that they need? Or develop these filters?
Yeah, very good question. Because I think I still struggle with that. I'm still on social media and I'm still comparing myself to everybody. But I think it's learning to be intentional. So for me, what I tell the girls, and we constantly communicate them with, whether it is through content or through chat and through interactions with them, I just tell them that we have the choice, right?
Yes.
Social media isn't just that we freely consume content. We have the power to filter it out.
Yep.
For me, I actually hide a lot of things. I only follow really positive things.
Yes.
So we have the power in ourselves to choose which content we consume, because what we consume becomes who we are.
Yes.
So that's number one. So that's like the practical things that you can do, right? But I think it also starts, the second thing is to really believe that we ourselves, though we have different forms, how we look, our personalities, we are beautiful as well. The reason why we compare is we're thinking that that girl is more beautiful than me, that girl is cooler than me. I think the change of mindset is really important, to start believing that who we are as we are, with all our gifts and talents and our uniqueness, is enough.
Right.
And I think that's one of the biggest messaging that we have in Rahasia Gadis, where no matter what you've been through, no matter what you look like, you have so much worth and you have so much value and you are beautiful, even though media and society and culture has told us this is beauty. We get to redefine what beauty is, and we start really believing it. So that really builds up someone's confidence, I think, at the end.
Yeah, well, you already told us, and you kind of cater with us, what really made you found Rahasia Gadis, or what made you build this Rahasia Gadis. But what is your strategy? Especially you were saying, that there's a lot of young girls that go to Rahasia Gadis and talk to you, basically in daily basis, talk about their problems and whatnot. Because we're seeing this, there's one that becomes like, let's say if it's bullying, there's a victim, and then there's those who is the bullier. And in which, how do you strategize to communicate? Because this is like two different kind of figures and whatnot, and you have to kind of send the message in a positive way, in a way, but you have to cater to like both different people.
Yes, so we're very inclusive. So I'm leading Rahasia Gadis with my partner Dika. She couldn't make it here today, and also we had another co-founder named Palen. And so what we do when we're leading and creating content Rahasia Gadis, we have to be really close to the girls. Because when you're making content, you're not making content to the dark world, right? It's to a person.
Yeah.
I always say that people connect with people. People don't necessarily connect with objects, right? And so what we do is that because we collect so many stories, we know exactly what they need. We know exactly what messages they need to talk about and what they need to hear. And that's why we customize each messaging and each content on social media to meet and to encourage them. For the two types of groups, we never separate them because I feel like, you know, I can be, you know, they can be, for instance, a survivor, but also maybe they have a different part of themselves that they are also, you know, they have different personalities, as different sides to themselves. And so I think for us, we just see them as equal as human beings, and we just target them according to the needs that they have.
Well, because I think it's quite hard when you want to send one message, but to let's say a victim and perpetrator, right? Like you have to send that positive message that they both would understand, kind of where they can grow because of what they see from Rahasia.
For sure, and I think education is so key in Indonesia. And I think the power of social media, it isn't only that we have the power in ourselves, but the fact that we can reach girls outside of Jakarta. We can reach girls in Aceh, in Palembang, in Nusa Tenggara Timur, who probably maybe have different values, different upbringings. And that's why I love the power of technology, is that ever since the pandemic, yes, I can't meet my girls anymore, but the reach that we were able to do. And I think maybe talking about mental health and anxiety and confidence is normal in the capital city, Jakarta, but maybe that's revolutionary for a girl in Sumatra or Sulawesi. And so that's what I'm always thinking about, not only Jakarta, which is more urban, but also girls in rural areas who really needs to hear this message. As simple as you are worth it because you are a girl is powerful, no matter who they are. Because especially in those areas, maybe, you know, girls are looked down upon on, or like the parents would rather have a man, or would rather have sons. That still exists today, you know. And so that's why we're spread across.
No, I love that you mentioned that, you know, you don't want to separate these kind of groups. And I was just thinking about how labor intensive must it be to reply to every single message that comes in. And you say every day you can have like hundreds of messages coming in from girls from all over Indonesia. So kudos to you. And another thing that I love that you mentioned before was that with the power of choice that you have, if you realize that you have the power of choice, that's actually a very powerful thing to your confidence booster. So what do you see, you know, do you see a shift in girls today realizing that they actually have this power, you know, compared to perhaps 5 or 6 years ago?
Yes, for sure. So we always say that what does Rahasia Gadis do? We do 3 things. We help girls know their worth, know their rights, and know their power. So I love the word, I use the word power to achieve freedom. I think there's been so much progress in girls' empowerment, in the standing of girls in Indonesia. But that doesn't mean that the work stops now, right? There's still a huge way to go. But definitely, like the Indonesia that I lived in when I was in high school and middle school, I went to US for a bit, came back. I think the awareness of the importance of advancing gender equality has risen in the last 1 or 2 years. I think 5 years ago, nobody was talking about, you know, girls' empowerment in such a large scale and such a repetitive scale. Even like brands and companies are really advocating for these messages. And I think it does help girls on their self-esteem. In the past, the only thing we'll see is really, really pretty, thin, white girls in the media. And now you see a rise of diverse girls that you feel represented. So for sure, there's so much progress, and I think those things really help a girl's self-esteem. And so I'm really glad of the progress that we've made, but I still do think that there's still a long way to go.
Of course, and especially if in Indonesia, it's very different than when we were back in the United States. There, it's more about racism and whatnot. Right? Us is very different. We have the same tone colors and whatnot. It's more about the culture that is very different, and which I think it's more in depth because our cultural roots are just so rooted within us. And then now you have to go against, you know, their upbringing and what their parents' cultures and whatnot. But we have to shape this young women, girls, you know, to be more inclusive, to accept the, you know, the modernity, what we are today, but not forget our traditions and culture.
Completely.
Right. So how do you And that is a very difficult task, by the way, Adelle.
Because to a lot of people, that's considered very extreme ideology.
Right.
Just they consider an
yes,
ideology, you know.
They do.
They consider instantly like this is like far feminism, you know. What I mean?
Yes.
But it's actually not, right?
Yeah. I mean, I would always say like what feminism is, what empowerment is, it isn't the fact that we want to replace men. No,
Yeah.
we value men, but we want to be as valued as men, right?
Right.
In equal standing, that we have different roles, but we're equals. And I completely agree with you on how it's so entrenched in culture and traditions, especially the gender norms that exist. So I think I wasn't really aware of it, to be honest, when I was growing up, because I was like very sheltered. I grew up with two brothers. I was treated exactly the same as my brothers. I went to US. I think women also have quite an equal standing there.
Correct.
And then after 5 years of US, I came back to Jakarta, Indonesia. That's when I realized, and I was reading the stories in the confession rooms. That's when I realized that there is a huge inequality and how they really mix it with a lot of cultural norms. For instance, a girl has to be submissive, or a girl has to stay at home, or a girl shouldn't go to school that's like too high education because at the end of the day she's going to stay at home, or a girl can't do business, or a girl, you know, so many restrictions that are placed upon us. And the bad things about these gender stereotypes is that if we don't voice out that this is not right, girls start believing it.
Right.
And you start limiting yourselves because of the stereotypes that are normalized.
Right.
And so our job, and I see Rahasia Gadis constantly wants to do, is really make people question about the norms that we've accepted. And there's so many girls that have accepted, like, I don't really want to do anything because that's what's expected of me. And don't get me wrong, if your dream and your passion and your interest is being a housewife, that's completely your choice.
Right. It's
I'm
your
not
choice.
saying that all women have to
At
be,
least
but you have that choice.
Yeah.
So the power of choice is so important in Indonesia. Even saying that as women we have a choice, that's already
Very
labeled
extreme.
Yeah. And so
really
I think the work of Rahasia Gadis is really taking those simple messages of like, girls deserve to know their rights. Girls can say no. Girls have choice. We can't separate the issue of gender equality and the issue of social culture traditions. That simple messages has to be packaged in ways that can be digested and like finally believed. And then I think we can see a more prosperous Indonesia.
But you've already seen changes, haven't you?
For sure, and that's why it keeps me going. If I don't see change in the last 5 years, I'll be like, maybe nothing is going on. But I think those little changes that you see, even like the testimonies I get from my girls, like they come to Rahasia Gadis, they're super timid, they're like looking down, they won't see eye contact with you. They meet us, they go to our workshops, and then in the end they become a leader because we have like a leadership program, and you see them leading other girls. And that's what I love about girls empowerment, is that it doesn't stop in one girl. Once you feel more capable, more confident, typically we end up bringing other girls with us, and we empower other girls. So that's definitely the reason, the hope of that there's progress, there can be progress, definitely keeps me going.
Wow.
Well, that certainly is great, especially because it's a great thing now that, you know, we see more women in leadership as well from the government side, and the government is making very, very big statements in inclusion and even implementing it in our G20, you know, agenda, and it's so great. It's so great.
Yes. I think Indonesia is probably one of the highest proportion of women leadership in the government. And so I think that's quite unique.
So, you know, Adelle, I mean, we are so very grateful for Rahasia Gadis, you and your partners also. But now you have the time right now, you know, to speak for all, you know, young girls that is watching you right now from across Indonesia, Asia, and of course around the world now listening to you. What would be your best advice, especially for young girls now, that they need to empower themselves and, you know, kind of to accept their perfection and also their imperfection. Perfection, there's no one that is perfect in this life, but to accept your flaws and your imperfection and to know your worth and also your growth.
Sounds complicated, right?
Amazing, yes. I think I would give an advice that was helpful to me, which is let go of imperfection. I think as girls, we're always expected to be perfect in a lot of spheres, and we just have to let go, but embrace of who we really are. And that starts from the process of really getting to know yourself. I think what really helped me was looking inwardly and accepting both my weaknesses, but also embracing my strength. A lot of girls in Indonesia, they just can't say positive things about themselves, right? And so I think that's really important.
Or others, I think.
To others sometimes, yes.
I think it's quite hard for girls to say, "Oh, you look so beautiful," and I'm like, you know, back in the States, we're so used to like, "Oh, you look so beautiful. What do you wear like that?" And then it seems that it's not the norm to share that kind of thing. I think that's where you're kind of growing together when you supported each other.
For sure, and that girls aren't competition with each other. There's enough success and beauty in this world.
There's a lot of
Yes. So yeah, that's definitely it for me.
Right, Rahasia Gadis, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls.
Yes.
Yes.
Adelle Odelia, thank you so much for being here with us. You know, not only empowering Gadis, but also us mothers
who have to empower girls now.
Yes.
Tell them to join Rahasia Gadis.
Of course, definitely.
Of course. So thank you so much for being with us today, and we're so glad to have had this conversation. Hopefully, whoever tunes in and can tune in again on our social media platforms to this conversation will be also inspired.
Thank you for having me.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Well, See the Stories will, of course, continue after the break with more stories from around the world because it is World Ocean Day.
All right.
Don't you go anywhere. Stay tuned on Viani Show. That's on See Today.